one potential suggestion for how to deal with that, and I'm sure we'll get, I'm sure that there's any number of ways to do this, or we could always pass the budget without funding pushed within that budget, and then just the rest of the commission could vote on a budget amendment. So there's any number of ways to handle that. I can't imagine that if anybody were to press that charge against you, that it would stand up in court, but it is, as public servants, it is pretty important for us to avoid even the appearance of impropriety and to avoid even giving folks the opportunity to make those allegations. So I'd say you're probably doing the right thing here, but I guess I still have a question as to whether or not it's appropriate for the mayor and I to be serving on the Riverfront Development Committee or on tourism or any number of boards that
No one has specifically raised that issue before, but I would say where you're, the tourism and the Riverfront Development Board, my understanding is that city personnel are a part of that, committee. So to me, that's comparing apples and oranges, because PUSH is completely unrelated to the
Sure.
city, even though they do fantastic work. I mean, no one has ever questioned that. But where the city is actually a member of an entity, and you're serving on that entity as part of your duties, to me, those are different issues.
And if I just may add, Mayor, and certainly the city solicitor's aware of this, I've been very proactive since coming on the Board of Commissioners about my relationship with serving as a board member on PUSH and clarifying this, and this recent question to the solicitor about how I should approach the upcoming budget appropriations is only the latest in a long conversation that I've had to make sure that I've covered all of my bases and that there's no conflict of interest there.
That's very correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other old business? Okay, new business, Commissioner Ricketts.
I saw in the paper where Parks and Rec would like to cover East Frankfort Pool. Correct? Should we make a
Well,
pavilion?
that was a recommendation that was made in 2003 and 2004.
It's a company known as
Just to make a story, when the aquatic centers were going, we were looking at a project for Juniper and a project for East, and the commission at that time asked us if we build a new aquatic center, what would we do with those two sites? And that was the recommendation that we came up in 2003. So it's nothing new, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a company based in Indianapolis, I'm going to pass this around, known as Renosis. They're the best ones that I've heard of that can actually redo a pool that we have. I don't know about Juniper Hills. I know that it's not the best quality right now either. And this may be something we need to look at in regard to redoing the pool. They just resurface it. So you're not taking any distance away from the laps. It's just redoing the surface of the
Right.
concrete to keep it from leaking and everything. It's a great company. It may be something you want to take to your board
Okay.
as well to look at. And for the commission, for us to maybe look at, we're so into, I know I am, recycling, but what about reusing what we already have with East Frankfort Park? I don't know what the cost of redoing a pavilion would be, filling up with concrete and making a pavilion versus what this may cost. So that side of the town has a pool as well. And even making that one a little bit more family friendly.
And we don't have to fill the pools, that was just a recommendation of
Yeah.
Legal City. We do pump the water, it is fenced in. That was their recommendation, and if you're not ever gonna use a pool again, you need to jackhammer the bottom, fill it in and do something with it for safety. But
If you already have water lines there,
yes, there's water lines there.
it may be something more to look into at cost and maybe for our town and for our citizens.
Commissioner Water.
just a couple of thoughts. I'm pretty open to suggestion here. Obviously, if we were to choose to do this, we'd have to, put out an RFP or an RFQ rather than just hiring one particular company outright and invite them to put in a bid. And I seem to recall the problem with the East Frankfort pool being a bit deeper than leaking. I seem to recall some talk about some of the pumps being so antiquated that the parts needed to replace
And
them aren't
sand
made
filter,
anymore.
as you will see on the tour, it's got about 12 weld spots on it. Sand filter's about 90,000 replaced. So it was getting at the point where we didn't know what it was. We were losing about 900,000 gallons of water a month. Do that, which is a waste of water. But when tax base is good and the money's good, nobody complains about it, paying the bill. At that time, the budget, going back, that was, as I told Kevin, there's 3 ways in recreation that you can cut your spending. One is close a facility, the other one's cut capital improvement, and the other one's close program. At that time, we chose to close that pool because we knew we could get the daycares and the attendants there over to Juniper. So, you know, like I said, we did close the facility. Nobody likes to close the facility, but we were able to move people from there to Juniper Hills. We thought at that time we had to save a lot of money, like $93,000 we took out of the pool budget, so that was one way for us to balance our budget.
Right,
Yes.
right.
And the reason we haven't jackhammered it is, as you know, you got 2 new people on the commission. You might get new people that want to open the pool back up, spend $200,000 or $300,000 and fix the pool up. I know in Lexington, Mayor Gray opted to close the pool, and one of his councilmen said no, and they're going to keep a neighborhood pool open. So that's the reason we haven't pressured jack, because once you jackhammer it, there's no going back.
Right.
That it's done, but we haven't really pressured anybody about it because you never know, commissioners do change, the feelings of the board does change. But that's something that we all need to think about. And that, we're gonna bring it to you all after the tour as a discussion item, so we hope we get some public input, get some citizen comments, because like I said, once you do that, there's no going back.
Okay, Commissioner Wilder.
I'm open, like I said, I'm open to the possibility of investing in getting this pool open again. Although since there's always been so much loose talk about an aquatic/community center, it'd probably be a good idea for us to discuss this in that context, and perhaps even make a choice between one or the other. And that's a long discussion and whatnot, but I'd just like to put that on the table.
Mr. Hayden.
With that too, Commissioner Wilder, could just be sitting down with that and planning and even doing things in a phase,
Sure.
where we may be able to do this, this, and this eventually, but we could probably do this sometime really soon, whatever it may be, in order to give our citizens a little bit more, and much less businesses something to market toward in order to moving their business here versus Georgetown, Shelbyville, Versailles, somewhere else.
All right, thank you for your comments, and you'll be coming back to us again. Okay, thank you. Any other new business? Commissioner Wilder.
I'd just like to request an update from Jeff real quick, actually, on there's just been this correspondence back and forth regarding Allnut Road. There was a citizen sent, I think was under the impression that we represent districts, and I guess because I campaigned there during the last campaign, she forwarded some concerns to me, just not realizing, I think, that we all represent the same area. And I was wondering if Jeff could kind of just give us a quick breakdown on what Public Works Department kind of already had in line for that area.
Well, I'll give you a
What area
quick
you're
update.
speaking of?
It's Allnut Road. It
Okay.
connects East Main to Shinkle.
Yeah, I know we talked, okay.
Yes, I got an email. I guess the citizen was concerned about potholes, trash, and the ditches on Allnut Drive being in disrepair. And the roadway, we went out and looked at it. The roadway's not too bad, but it's on the resurfacing list for next year. It's got several utility cuts on the road, and it's probably been over 10 years ago it was paved. So we placed it on next year's resurfacing list. We're going to recommend that next year. The potholes that were there, I didn't see any today when I went out there. So, but what I did see, all the ditches, over time people have filled in their ditches with gravel or concrete, or the city may have paved them years ago for them to park on the side of the street, and probably for the last 5 or 10 years have not maintained those. And so they're rutted out. They probably have 3 or 4 cars per residence, and they're just parking it everywhere and filling up their front yard with gravel. So I see that as one of the main concerns when you drive down that street is just the shoulders are rutted up and so forth. The city used to, in all these little neighborhoods that didn't have driveways and curb and gutter, would work with residents in paving pull-offs. That's not on the main road, but on the side yard, what's in the right of way. The city would go out and help people accommodate the parking by paving, and that was years ago. And what we got into, once that was started, and then you don't maintain it, they get potholes and disrepair because they basically pave over grass or just a real thin layer of gravel, and it's just not built to a street spec. So when you park on those, they just don't last very well. What we started last year to address this problem in Bell Point is when our city streets are resurfaced, the paving company, we would go and sign up people who would want their pull-off paved ahead of time. They would agree to pay for the material, and that paver could widen the paver out and get those as he goes down the street. So I would say next year when we resurface the road, we'll notify all the residents on that street or the owners and see if they would like their pull-off paved as we pave the city street. So that's kind of what my recommendation would be. I think the sewer department did a project in the past, and there was some question about a piece of equipment parked maybe in an area that maybe hasn't been, and so I think Tom Bradley out of my office called someone in the sewer department to go and look and see if that piece of equipment, construction equipment for a project, for a lateral or a main project on Alma.
Done by a contractor, I think maybe he's gonna look at these.
You know, the equipment may have damaged one of these pull-offs, and so Robert Barker was going to go see what that was about. That was our suggestion, is we don't really have the crew to go out and pave all these pull-offs around town, but to make an offer to the residents when we pave their street, if they want to pay our contractor, who seems, he would work with the residents to widen out the paver, and the residents would pay that cost. And we've done that on several roads last year, and make that offer as we get through their neighborhood in the future.
Would pay the cost of materials.
Pay the
And we
cost of
handle the labor.
materials.
Must, okay, great.
Okay. Any other new business? Well, it looks like,
Mayor,
yes,
this may need to be addressed with Mr. Hackbart. I notice more and more people down at the concerts. I didn't know if we need to put more trash cans up around downtown, or does DFI, do we help supply the trash cans for the concerts at DFI? DFI put those down?
We put the ones on the mall and the old Capitol grounds. We don't put any extra St. Clair and the old Capitol.
Or if we need to put like a recycle bin, there's so many.
We put
Plastic
recycling bins
cups.
also on the old Capitol and the mall. We can put more, but that's what we're responsible, not the merchants down the side, but just the mall and the old Capitol. If we need to put some more, we put some more.
Do the merchants
Kelly's
have?
doing too good a job.
Yeah, but there's just tons of plastic cups and of course cans and bottles that we recycle now.
And I know there was a lot of trash, but we're only, like I said,
Right.
we come in Saturday, we clean the old Capitol and the mall, but I know down the merchant side, there was a lot of garbage.
So maybe we should talk to Ms. Everman and see about the merchants getting more recycle bins or asking for those in order
That
to
would
set
be
up.
good.
I think that would be the best option.
any other new business?